A once successful diplomat from a picture-perfect family unraveled under the weight of career pressure, marital strain, and long-standing psychological turmoil. After being passed over for a promotion in the mid-1970s, he abruptly left work, purchased tools later tied to a brutal crime, and that night carried out the unthinkable. What followed was a decades-long international manhunt marked by mysterious sightings, strange letters hinting at possible accomplices, missing documents, and dead-end leads stretching from North Carolina to Europe. Despite renewed interest over the years, the fugitive has never been found, leaving behind one of the most haunting, unsolved family homicide cases in American history. Welcome to Without a Trace. I'm your host, Jalyn. Every file holds a mystery. Every story deserves to be heard. This is Brad's story. William Bradford Bishop Jr., known to the family as Brad, was born on August 1st, 1936 in Pasadena, California. He attended South Pasadena High School, where he met his high school sweetheart, Annette Wise. In high school, Brad quarterbacked for the football team, and Annette was a cheerleader. Brad graduated in 1954 and Annette the following year. After receiving a C average in high school, Brad went on to receive an Ivy League education. He earned a bachelor's degree in history from Yale and a master's degree in international studies from Middlebury College. Alternatively, it has been reported that Brad obtained a bachelor's degree in American studies from Yale and a master's degree in Italian from Middlebury College. He also received a master's degree in African Studies from UCLA. After graduating from Yale in 1959, Brad married Annette. The couple welcomed their first son, William Bradford Bishop III, known to the family as Brad, on August 13, 1961, in Monterey, California. His birth came during one of his father's military intelligence assignments, a role that would later evolve into a diplomatic career and take the family across multiple continents. Brad III was intelligent, expressive, and curious. His life, like that of his brothers, was shaped by the unique environment of a diplomatic household. He spent portions of his childhood overseas, learning to adapt across languages and cultures, while also returning stateside to a relatively quiet suburban life in Maryland. Brad was reportedly a good student. He was athletic and participated in organized swimming, among other activities. Footage from home movies shows him swimming competitively, playing on the beach with his brothers, and vacationing with his family on skiing trips. Brenton Germain Bishop, known to the family as Brent, was born on July 30th, 1965 in Pasadena, California. There are no detailed public records on Brent's life. Jeffrey Bishop was born on February 12th, 1971 in Pasadena, California. By the time Jeffrey was born, the family had returned stateside. Like Brent, there are no known public details about Jeffrey's life. Brad Jr. joined the United States Army and spent 4 years working in counterintelligence. He spoke 5 languages fluently: English, Italian, French, Spanish, and Serbo-Croatian. After leaving the Army, Brad joined the U.S. Department of State and served in the Foreign Service in many postings overseas. This included postings in several Italian cities from 1968 to 1972. He also served in Africa from 1972 to 1974. After living the life of an international diplomat at posts around the world, Brad settled with his family in the Washington, D.C. area in the late 1970s. Colleagues say that the transition to a desk job was difficult for Brad. He, like a lot of his State Department colleagues, felt enormous pressure to be promoted, though Brad took it much more seriously. To the outside world, the Bishops were the perfect family. With 3 kids and a dog, the family appeared well off, owning 2 cars and a motorcycle. They played tennis, went swimming at the community club, and liked to ski. However, behind closed doors, there were cracks in the marriage. Brad's career was a source of tension in the marriage. He wanted another overseas posting, but Annette didn't. She wanted to pursue an art education and had begun to take classes, but Brad wanted her to remain a stay-at-home mom. The family was having financial troubles too. The IRS was auditing its taxes. Brad's mother had helped them buy their house, providing a $30,000 down payment. She and Annette were close, but the mother-son relationship was strained. Brad had trouble sleeping, and twice weekly he was seeing a psychiatrist. On March 1st, 1976, Brad learned he had been passed over for a promotion. Upset, he told his supervisor that he didn't feel well and left for the day. Instead of seeing a doctor, he purchased a gas can, a shovel, and a sledgehammer from a local hardware store. That evening, Brad returned home, and sometime later, he murdered his entire family. It is believed that Annette was killed first, followed by his mother. Brad then attacked his sons while they slept in their rooms. According to forensic investigators, the oldest son, Brad III, suffered the most severe injuries. His autopsy indicated he was struck with greater force and intensity than his younger brothers. Officials have speculated that he may have been awoken during the attack, or that his father's fury toward him was particularly personal. After the murders, Brad wrapped the bodies of his wife, mother, and 3 sons in blankets and placed their bodies in the back of the family's station wagon. He drove them more than 300 miles to a remote forested area outside Columbia, North Carolina. There, he dug a shallow grave, poured gasoline over the bodies, and set them on fire. The next day, a North Carolina forest ranger responding to smoke in the area discovered the smoldering remains. At first, no one knew who the remains belonged to. There was no identification found at the scene, but soon the pieces fell into place. The shovel used in the burial bore a torn store label that brought investigators to a local hardware store in Potomac, Maryland. Back in Maryland, a neighbor of the Bishops had reported the family missing. On May 8, 1976, Montgomery police went to the Bishops' home after a neighbor reported not seeing the family for a while. Outside the house, they spotted a trail of blood leading from the front door to the driveway. Inside the home, police found blood everywhere, in each of the 4 bedrooms and all over the upstairs bathroom. There were blood-soaked linens, mattresses and pillowcases, human bones, tissue, fibers, and hair, but no bodies. Autopsies later confirmed the identities of the bodies found in North Carolina. Authorities' prime suspect, Brad, had vanished. By the time law enforcement began searching for Brad, he was already gone. Nearly 3 weeks after the murders took place, Brad's abandoned vehicle turned up in Great Smoky Mountains National Park in Tennessee. Inside the car, police found a blood-stained hammer, toiletries, and dog biscuits. Police theorized that Brad joined the flow of hikers on the Appalachian Trail. They attempted to follow his scent with bloodhounds, but without success. Credit card receipts were found in the station wagon, and witnesses indicated that he had stopped at a sporting goods shop and then at a convenience store, but that he wasn't alone. He was seen with a woman and a dog. The family dog, Leo, was unaccounted for and is believed to be the dog Brad was seen traveling with. The identity of the woman he was traveling with remains unknown. Later, investigators would reconstruct Brad's movements on the day of the crime. That Monday, March 1st, 1976, Brad went to look at a memo listing new promotions that had been posted in a hallway of the office. According to a coworker, Brad became upset, saying the promotion should have been his. A coworker who saw Brad leaving work earlier that day said he looked agitated. At 2 p.m., he withdrew $400 from the American Security Bank and drove to a Texaco station where he purchased 13 gallons of gas with his credit card. 4 hours later, he used his credit card again to buy a gas can and a sledgehammer. Brad returned to his home between 7:30 and 8 p.m. Police believe he likely killed his wife first, then his mother as she returned from walking the family dog. Finally, he killed his 3 sons, aged 5, 10, and 14, while they slept in an upstairs bedroom. He then packed their bodies into the family station wagon, a maroon 1974 Chevy Malibu, and with their golden retriever, Leo, he drove nearly 300 miles to a remote site where he allegedly placed the bodies in a shallow grave and set them on fire. Some accounts placed him in Jacksonville, North Carolina, just days after the crime, and eventually in Europe. A reported sighting in Italy in 1978 from a former coworker who recognized him in a public restroom remains the most credible sighting. Still, Brad has never been found. Authorities were willing to try anything to find Brad. They even considered using psychics. However, 2 offered to help but then backed out, claiming they were afraid. Brad's psychiatrist refused to speak with investigators after the killings, citing patient-physician confidentiality. He died in New Jersey in 2005, never having cooperated with authorities. Investigators would occasionally run Brad's Social Security number through credit bureaus. In 1990, they received a hit on a man in Los Angeles with a different name but the same Social Security number. The man had died, and investigators never got to the bottom of it. But the lead prompted investigators to look over Brad's file with a fresh set of eyes. In the file, there was a certified letter from Albert Kenneth Bankston, a prisoner at a federal prison in Illinois. The letter, dated 16 days after the murders, was addressed to Mr. Bradford Bishop Jr., Assistant Chief, Special Trade Office. The letter referred to 2 earlier letters that he had written the month before and hinted at a plot involving other people. It mentioned a man named David Paul Allen, who was familiar with the area where the bodies were buried. Investigators were unable to speak with Bankston as he had died of cancer in prison 9 years earlier. However, investigators were able to interview Allen by phone at a prison in Michigan. Allen told them that Brad had paid them to kill the family and they were to come to the house under the guise of doing some gutter or home repair work. All this was supposed to take place while Brad was attending a business trip in Europe from January 27th to February 6th, 1976. In addition to Allen, the letter mentioned an unnamed woman and a man named Sonny, both of whom investigators believe may have been a part of the plot to kill Brad's family. Investigators traveled to Maine to interview the man known as Sonny, who was in a witness protection program there. The man said he didn't know anything about the murder-for-hire plan, but that he wouldn't have killed the kids anyway, as it was, quote, against their code. The investigators returned for a second look at Brad's file, but copies of Bankston's certified letter were now missing. A State Department official said an FBI agent had reviewed the file since their last visit. Investigators tried to locate the agent, but no one could even tell them if the guy existed. The investigators did learn from the file that the CIA had done a threat assessment of Brad after the homicides and concluded that he didn't pose a security threat. In an effort to learn more, investigators filed a formal information request. 6 months later, on March 23, 1993, the CIA responded that after thorough and diligent searches, no records responsive to the request were located. On March 19, 2000, Lauren of Asheboro, North Carolina, acquired an old diary for $38 at a local flea market. On the first page were the words, Bradford Bishop Diary. The woman sent the diary to the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office to be copied, then returned. The diary covers 6 years, from October 1965 to October 1971. In it, Brad discusses his career, writing in February 1967, if you're going to succeed in the Foreign Service, make ambassador before you're 50, hold positions of responsibility, constant dedication and considerable sacrifice of time and thought are required. He also discusses his problems with insomnia. On February 27, 1967, Brad writes, toxic degenerative psychoses, chronic low-level maniac. A year later, he complains of, quote, this accursed insomnia. It's amazing despite how lousy you feel all doped up, smoking a few cigarettes. His problems, he writes, must be overcome with love, style, self-satisfaction. There are 2 references to one of his sons, but no mentions of his wife. The writing goes from neat to nearly illegible, with about a 4-year gap before the last entry on October 23, 1971. He writes, your family grows more beautiful, and you still stand on the threshold. Outwardly, your accomplishments are great. My, such symbols, promotions, citations, languages, degrees. Still, you stand on the threshold. You have soared to the heights and plummeted, each time to depths. Though it provides an interesting insight into the mind of Brad, it brought investigators no closer to finding Brad or figuring out his motive for killing his family. The last major tip was received in 2013 after a man watched an episode of The Hunt with John Walsh, in which Brad's photo was aired. The tip came from a funeral home worker in Scottsboro, Alabama, who thought Brad looked just like a man who was buried in Scottsboro in 1981 and was never identified. The unidentified man was walking along a road when he was run over by a car. People came by the funeral home for weeks, but no one in the small town recognized him. The body was exhumed, and the remains were sent to a forensic lab in Virginia to see whether there was a match of DNA, fingerprints, or dental records. The DNA was not a match to Brad's DNA file. Annette, Brad, Brent, and Jeffrey's remains were cremated, though no gravesite marks their presence. Brad was tried in absentia and charged with 5 counts of first-degree murder. He was included in the 10 most wanted fugitives list on April 10, 2014. He was removed from the list on June 27, 2018, after it was determined that he no longer fit the criteria for inclusion on the list. Brad is believed to have fled to Europe. This theory is supported by claims of sightings overseas in England, Belgium, Finland, Sweden, Spain, the Netherlands, Germany, Greece, and Switzerland. If alive, Brad would be 89 today. Thank you for listening to Without a Trace. I hope you enjoyed our deep dive into Brad's disappearance. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and follow Without a Trace on social media. And join me next week as I dive into another case.